You're welcome. Let me take you through the details of those stories and more. The Supreme Court has today allowed the sales of properties belonging to businessman Alfred Woyome by the Attorney General. The properties are worth 20 million cedis. The Attorney General's office had earmarked the 3 residential properties for sale to defray a 47.2 million cedi judgment debt owed the state by Mr. Woyome. But receivers of the defunct bank claimed they own the properties due to the businessman's failure to repay a loan. Court correspondent Joseph Akable joins me in the studio. We're going to start with him telling us about the properties in question. Now the court has given the AG the go-ahead to sell. Joseph, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gifty.
Tell us about these properties.
So first, there's one residential property at Tesano House number 168. It was listed in the documents the AG filed. There is also one residential property at Pehe and 2 residential properties at Trasako, Accra, and also a quarry at Mafi in the Volta region. And we are told that there are some vehicles and other movable assets that are also part of the list that the court has given the Attorney General a green light to go ahead and sell.
We understand the court also ruled that the receivers of the defunct UT Bank were colluded with Mr. Woyome. In what way did they say the two actually worked together? In
fact, the Deputy Attorney General, Godfrey Adami, had argued that 9 months after the UT Bank had supposedly bought the properties from Mr. Woyome, they actually gave him a loan and he used the same properties as collateral for the loan. And so the court said that the alleged sale, in the words of Justice Benin, he said it was a sham and that it was just an attempt by the bank and the businessman to prevent the state from defraying the debt that the Supreme Court has ordered that he repays the money from them. So the court concluded that indeed there was no such transaction that have taken place and that the property indeed belongs to Mr. Woyome.
So what it means is that the court was satisfied with information giving it to indicate that the properties did not belong to these to these banks.
Yes, but rather the property belongs to the businessman.
Do we know whether or not these banks will be charged for anything if they colluded to lie? Essentially.
In fact, I've been speaking to the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, Godfrey Adami, and he makes the point that they are considering pressing criminal charges against the businessman first because of the finding that he did colluded with a bank, as has been found by the Supreme Court. We can listen to Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Adami.
So the decisions of the court were quite clear that the claim by UT Bank and Anato Holdings Limited were all a sham. In respect to the claim by UT Bank, the court indicated that was actually a collusion, as the Attorney General alleged, was an effort to collude with the judgment debtor to avoid a satisfaction of the judgment debt. And that to me is very significant. To me, it holds a lot of significance for accountability and the rule of law, that indeed you cannot pillage or deprive the state of funds and then resort to all manner of tactics just to avoid a satisfaction of the judgment debt given against you. And to me, it goes a long way for establishing and consolidating the rule of law, and also it's a shot to the arm for the fight against impunity, the lack of accountability. So it has a lot of significance for accountability as far as I'm concerned. And we're very much satisfied by the ruling. And as we continued right from the beginning, the claims were collusion. And the court having so found that Woyome attempted to collude with the bank to prevent an execution of the judgment against him. To me, it's really an act that the state can take him on in terms of criminal prosecution, what I mean. Clearly, this is something that I will consider prosecuting him for crime. And as you remember, I indicated, well, in all the effort that were made by Woyome to avoid such judgment debts, that there's a day of reckoning will come. Until the day of reckoning, and to God be the glory.
In terms of figures, how significant is this towards this?
Well, I mean, significantly, well, the Trasako properties, as per the valuation report that were done even last year, all had a value of about 1.2, 1.5 million dollars each, and the Pehe residence where he lives also has similar value, and the quarry at Mafi also has even greater value. So now, even if you're looking at minimum $4.5 to $5 million, I think that should give us something in the region of about minimum of 20 million Ghana cedis, and we continue also to discover more assets from office. Indeed, from the document entered by UT Bank, 2 other properties were discovered. That's another property at Islegon. So all these properties will be proceeded against, and I'm sure realize, we have about 30 million Ghana cedis by the time we're done with this execution. And that's not to take account of other properties that we continue to discover.
So what happens next after the court ruling?
So it brings to an end all his tactics or the attempt to evade the judgment debt, and all we have to do now is to proceed to auction the properties. And of course, the law requires us to set the reserve price. The reserve price is the minimum price at which the property can be sold. So that application will be filed straight away by tomorrow. We'll file the application for reserve price, or latest by Monday, file application for reserve price, and I'm sure it will be determined the week thereafter. And the auctioneer will proceed to knock down the properties in sale.
Godfrey Dami there speaking to Joseph Akable earlier. Joseph, we also know that the African Court on Human and People's Rights will be delivering judgment on a case filed by Mr. Woyome, in which case he argues or he alleges that his rights have been trampled upon here in Ghana.
So the Deputy AG raises two issues. First, he says that Ghana has argued out a good case and they are confident a decision will go in their favor. The second point he makes is that in the event that decision does not go in the favor of the country, he finds it difficult as to how it will affect this particular retrieval of the money, because he explains that the Supreme Court does not share its jurisdiction with any other body, either within or beyond, and that Supreme Court has given an order that he repays the money, so he must pay back the money. We can listen to him on that.
Well, I expect it to go in our favor. Well, first and foremost, it's not a human rights claim. There is no human rights offense that has been violated, and also this decision was a constitutional matter. It is one in the sole preserve of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court of Ghana. And I do not think that any court whatsoever can give any ruling to override the Supreme Court of Ghana's decision. So I'm not bothered at all. Even if the Supreme Court, even if the African Court of Human Rights were to give any adverse ruling unreasonably, it's something that will not be enforceable in the courts of Ghana. And I say so because if our constitution is quite clear. The Constitution is the primary law of Ghana, and that is what regulates the prosecution of the matter in Ghana, and it sets the Supreme Court as the highest court of Ghana. And it is so, especially in terms of constitutional matters. It was clearly a constitutional action, and it was a sole preserved mandate to the Supreme Court of Ghana. The Supreme Court of Ghana has ruled today to them giving their mandate, allowing the execution. So I'm not bothered about what's going to happen in Tanzania tomorrow.
So, well, Godfrey Dami there again, and he makes the case that they expect that it will go the government's way. In any case, if it doesn't, they do not see how that will overrule what the Supreme Court of Ghana says, which means that this case, this ruling stands irrespective.
In fact, that is African Human Rights Court. There was a time that provisional measures were granted by the court in favor of Mr. Woyome, asking that they should halt any process leading to that. And there was actually a day that a case was being heard at the Supreme Court, and his lawyers did submit those provisional measures to the Supreme Court to inform them that there is a pending external action, and so the Supreme Court should actually hold on to proceedings till the end of that matter. The Supreme Court, actually presided by Justice Benin, did reject that document that had been submitted, saying that it has authority, it is simply going about doing its work, and it's no other entity, be it an external court or even anybody within a country, can stop it from performing its functions. So it's going ahead with that.
But earlier this year, you were in Ethiopia, and you did speak to the president of the regional court on how they expect that Ghana will act on the ruling.
In fact, they make the point that once the state has signed on to and obeys the court and in fact appears before it, they expect that whatever decision that comes, the state must enforce it. We can listen to the president of the African Human Rights Court saying that.
Okay, I will respond to your question in a general way. Know about the case, because the case is pending before the court, so I cannot express myself on the case pending before the court. But generally, what I can say is that it's an international court, and that the states have ratified the protocol, so they are abide by the decision that this court render when it comes to cases before it. So we cannot oppose the national court or the decision of a national court, because the decision of the African court when it comes to decisions regarding human rights violations is decisions superior to all the decision made by the court, because we express on violation on human rights, not not on other matters. So no, the court, the decision of the court is a decision that the state should implement. That's it.
So that should be at the executive.
When the state, the party before the court is the state, not a national court, or perhaps it can involve, of course, a national court or other institution, but the state that has been sanctioned or recognized as having violated human rights is the state. Yeah.
And you expect all the nations, and in this case Ghana included, cases to respect and abide by whatever decision that will come from the court once they've agreed themselves to ratify it and obey by it?
No, I expect all the countries, all the state parties, all the countries before the court to respect the decision of the court. So I'm not talking on a specific country. I'm speaking on a general way, as I said. Yeah. Generally speaking, what a court can expect is that its decision be implemented, being respected. So, yeah.
Joseph Akable there earlier this year when he traveled to Ethiopia with the president of that court there. So, Joseph, it looks pretty much like what's happening in the case of the traders, Nigerian traders and Ghanaian traders, about what ECOWAS treaty says and what the local laws say as well. So it looks like a little bit of a tight-up there. We'll have to wait for tomorrow to see. But when next do they go to court on this matter?
So not a firm date has been fixed yet. The AG says they are going to commence the actions relating to this decision that has come in their favor. He goes beyond it to say that there are other properties that they've also identified. And if you recall, before this particular action by UT Bank had commenced, Mr. Woyome was in the witness box. He was being orally examined by the Deputy Attorney General, asking him which properties belong to him and which ones don't belong to him, in order to identify them for sale as well. So once they are done with this, the AG says they expect that the court will fix a date to enable them to continue with that process as well.
Right, thank you very much. Joseph Akable is our court correspondent there, bringing us up to speed on what happened today. But let's take this matter, move it forward. Let's carry it a bit forward. I have here in the studio spokesperson for the businessman Alfred Agbesi Woyome, his Reginald Seth Dogbe, so that we can talk about this further. Mr. Dogbe, thank you very much and welcome to the show.
Thanks, and thanks for having me.
Were you in court today yourself?
No, I wasn't in court.
You weren't in court today. So how did the news come to you and to your boss, Mr. Woyome?
As usual, he's very normal about these things.
Well, when you say he's normal, what does it mean?
Yeah, he believes in the court process, and he has always taught us that whatever decision the court arrives at, and when you are dissatisfied, there are a lot other more windows you can exploit to vindicate your right. So it's fine. And being a man of God here, it's very strong.
How does he feel about the fact that at the moment the court has essentially made it okay for the Attorney General to go on and sell his properties?
He believes in the law. He respects the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, but strongly, as in the previous case, disagree with them. You know, what was the reason for Mr. Alfred Agbesi Woyome going to the African Court? It's because he disagrees with the review decision of the Supreme Court. That is why he went there, that they should adjudicate the case and he vindicates his right. And through that, the African Court served Ghana that they should stop all processes. And we expected that the Supreme Court, being the court of law, being the highest court of the land, when they were notified, would stop processes and allow the African Court gives its judgment. And then whatever the outcome, they proceed. But they've decided to do what they're doing. And interestingly, less than 24 hours from now, the African Court is going to give judgment in the same matter.
You still have nothing, your side still has nothing to lose. If there is, in fact, there is a judgment here in Ghana, you're expecting another judgment, you have nothing to lose, do you?
A lot, it's not about what Mr. Woyome will lose or our side will lose, but it's about the respect for the Constitution of Ghana and respect for international laws and protocols.
If you heard what Joseph said, he said that the courts say that your lawyers raised this matter in court, and the courts told them they do not share their powers with any other organization.
These are two different issues. Okay. What they said initially was that it was served on the AG and not the Supreme Court. Okay. And then they don't share jurisdiction. And I asked the question, you see, let's get serious as a nation. The Supreme Court is a creation of the Constitution of Ghana. The Supreme Court does not create the Constitution. So when the Constitution says per Article 40, 73, 75, we should respect international protocols, conventions, and whatever, it behoves the Supreme Court to respect it.
But the Supreme Court interprets, it's an interpreter of the Constitution.
And they cannot
interpret
they cannot interpret in isolation. Doesn't mean it doesn't cover them, that a portion of this Constitution does not cover the Supreme Court? No. Let's take, for instance, why did we go there? We went to the Supreme Court, we went to the African Court because of the judgment of the Supreme Court. Why the rush?
You went to the
African Court because of the review
your rights have been
by the Supreme Court. Not by me, Regina Sedogbe, not by you.
In any case, there has not been a judgment on that case yet.
There shouldn't be a judgment. We all know that when there's a case pending and you go to another body, it stops this. You cannot tell me, and Godfred Dami, Honorable, should be worried. When he said he's not worried because no matter the outcome of the case tomorrow, they will still continue.
He believes that, first of all, he believes that the case will go their way. He believes they will win, you will lose. That secondly, he believes that even if they don't
he said
win.
Worried. I'm dealing with the worried.
Yeah,
he
said even if they don't win,
yes,
they're not worried because this ruling by the Supreme Court will still stand.
No, you see, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I don't want to go into that, but then you should be worried because if you're not worried, it means they'll continue to act illegally. That is what I understand it to mean. Let's even say you agreed to act in any way you want, and the African Court says they are going to sanction Ghana. Whose fault? And there have been cases, we have cases in this country where, let's not behave as if the Supreme Court does not err. I've known cases they've ruled on, people went international and they won. Ghana paid big. It's the state, I'm worried.
You expect that such a situation will be your lot, that you would eventually win
they should not rush.
The cost?
They need not rush. The Attorney General, I think the Supreme Court was only wrongfully indulging the AG by saying we have sovereignty. Let me tell you, when you sign onto international protocols and conventions, it's a lot of countries that have come together ceding some of their rights. You are a sovereign country, but you have decided to join an international body. So all the powers you have, some of them are ceded. You lose it. So we cannot pretend that we are the Supreme Court and that we can't. Then let's stop because the lawlessness is too much. When
you see what has happened today.
No, let me tell you. I'm coming. The lawlessness is the political, the vigilantes and blah blah is even eating into the judiciary.
Let's focus on your matter.
What happens when we won the case against Cote d'Ivoire? Were we not celebrating? If Cote d'Ivoire were to behave the way we are behaving, so lawless, what would happen?
Hold on. That was not a situation where an individual in the country has gone to another.
Don't look at the individual. We are talking about law.
Let me land with my submission. That it was not a case between an individual of the country and that country. This was between two separate sovereign countries.
When you look, don't look. It can even
no,
be. No,
I'm just saying that those are different situations.
What we are talking about is not different. We are talking of law. What I'm getting from you, and it's common in this country, is that when an individual in this country, something happens to him, he's an individual, it doesn't matter.
That's not the point.
Hold on.
You're saying,
yes,
you're comparing the case between Mr. Woyome and the court to what happened with Ivory Coast and Ghana at the International Court. And I'm saying, I'm just providing that clarification for my viewers that that is not that case was different from what Mr. because
you are wrong. You are wrong on that.
Hold on. The facts are that case was between Ivory Coast, Ghana. So it was two sovereign countries. In this particular one, it's between a national of this country and the country itself.
What I'm telling you, you don't get it. That is why maybe you're going on
Help
that
me
tangent.
get it.
What I'm saying is this: Ghana agreed, or Côte d'Ivoire agreed, to stop everything they were doing for the case to be determined, because they have signed onto a certain protocol, so they respected the law. It doesn't matter if it's an individual from Côte d'Ivoire or an individual from Ghana.
Your perspective, that's
what I'm saying is that...
Your perspective, that's
what I'm saying is that... I'm talking of Article 40 here. I'm trying to tell you that Ghana simply refused. The AG simply refused. The Supreme Court only refused to respect our own constitution. Article 40.
Okay, to respect the constitution or to respect the
law.
Treaty that they've signed
on? The Article 40 is telling you, when you read Article 40, it's telling you that we must, as a nation, respect charters, protocols, and everything.
Okay.
So it's binding on us. So if the same charter you signed to, that establish a court, and that body tells you, stop every process. The world is not coming to an end tomorrow. When we make a determination, you proceed. You refuse, you claim jurisdiction, sovereignty, you give judgment. Then now we hear from the man who is to defend the constitution says, oh, it doesn't matter whatever the outcome of the case, because these are two different. Are you trying to say... You are
worried about that.
I'm worried because people who are to respect the law are not respecting the law. That is my worry.
What are your expectations, your camp's expectations for tomorrow's ruling?
Like I always say, we're going to win. Okay. And they know we're going to win, so they are preparing the minds of Ghanaians. And I will say something very interesting here. You see, when lawyers are talking, they should talk so that we the laymen will learn. You cannot say that is a different judgment and this one we can. What judgment, what are the reliefs Mr. Woyome is seeking at the African Court?
Take us through them again.
The man says, you have abused my right. And how did you abuse my right? You have abused my right. You have not given me fair hearing because money that is due me, legally paid me. You have made a ruling that I should pay that money back. He disagrees. And then you say when he wins that judgment, where they said, no, the man deserves the money, you will still continue selling his property because, so okay. What are they going to enforce?
So at this point, it still looks like we're really even going ahead of ourselves because the ruling for tomorrow from that international court has not yet been said. But there's just a few issues I want to draw your attention to and find out what answers you give to the people of Ghana. There is a point where the courts, it was indicated in courts that receivers of the defunct UT Bank actually colluded with Mr. Woyome to indicate that the properties earmarked did not belong to Mr. Woyome and that it belonged to the bank, but it found that the court found out those were not true.
My simple answer would be this. I don't know how they arrive at that, but I don't want to go into it because the judgment itself for me is in question. When I stand here personally and I said the judgment today and all other activities were further violation of Mr. Woyome's rights and that judgment is in question, I shouldn't even be speaking to it. So it's just a continuous harassment and abuse of Mr. Woyome. Okay.
As it stands now, the Attorney General has the right to go ahead. They've actually mentioned some of the properties. How is Mr. Woyome going to
He's taking
handle
it easy.
that?
Let me tell you, see, I feel sorry for this country. You see, Mr. Woyome has been able to go through the course up to review. And if he were just an ordinary man, that might be the end. He might have lost his properties long ago and everything. But because he has a means, he's got the knowledge, and is seeking redress. They have problem with it. And ask, how many ordinary people have suffered like this? You understand? How many ordinary people have suffered like this? That is why there should be fairness in what is happening.
So let's wait for that ruling from tomorrow. But ahead of that, what are the other, in both scenarios, what options are available to you and your
I was in court some years ago where a Supreme Court judge even asked Mr. Woyome, where can you go? You can't go anywhere. Then he went to Africa. They went to respond. Today, they again feel when they rule against them, what can they do? They should wait. They should wait. When the ruling comes, they can sell everything they want. But when it goes against them, I don't know.
When it goes against them, what are your expectations?
That is why, you see, it's not as if I'm the state, don't respect the right of the citizen, do everything in the interest and benefit of the state. And who are the state? We are the state. So why do you punish a citizen unnecessarily?
That's how you see it.
That is how
he's been punished unnecessarily.
Yeah, harassment.
But the court ruled that he should pay back that money, and because the money was paid to him illegally.
It's always been like that. They lost the case. They went. You see, these are legal processes. So it's not as if some people want to make it a hit.
Very well.
Because we said when we come, we'll retrieve money. So within this time, we should be able to set that record. It might hurt us.
Okay.
Today, Ghanaians might be celebrating it, but the outcome might not be good.
You think it's not in the good interest of the
when
nation?
you heard what the president said, when you heard, you see, we should learn to respect the laws of this country. Nobody is above the law. The president is not above the law. No court in this country, including the Supreme Court, they are not above the Constitution and the law of this country. And we should relook. Just recently, who checks the Supreme Court? That is all I say. Let's put our eyes on them.
Who checks the Supreme Court? Let's keep our eyes on them. That's Reginald Seth Dogbe, his spokesperson for businessman Alfred Agbesi Woyome. They do not accept the ruling, and they say that we need to wait for what will happen in the African Court of Human and People's Rights tomorrow. Mr. Dogbe, thank you very much for coming to the studio.